On a cold night, a drunk man wanders in the forest and ends up at a cemetery. He rests on a gravestone while dwelling on his pathetic life in the village. After a short while, he can't believe his eyes when he notices the gravestones moving on their own. We then see a lone girl get dropped off in the village by a truck, but before leaving, the driver warns her not to go into the mountains. Back to the drunk, he tells the police what happened at the cemetery. Although the police state that it might simply be the work of vandals, the drunk reveals he saw people digging up the graves and muttering the name Zhang. Just then, the inspector's attention is drawn to an empty grave in memory of a guy called Zhang Zilan. Upon seeing the name, the inspector realizes the matter is more serious than he thought. As he moves to call the grandson of the Zhang family, the girl shows up claiming the grave belongs to her grandfather. Inspector Song is covertly suspicious of her identity, so she offers him her ID with the name Feng Baobao, who we come to discover is our main protagonist. In the evening, we see another one of our protagonists, called Chulan, arriving at the village where he is welcomed by an acquaintance who teases him for getting no girls. At the police station, Chulan is dumbfounded when he is told that his grandfather's grave was robbed. The inspector adds that he encountered a girl by the name of Feng Baobao who claimed to be his stepsister. That night, Chulan heads to his grandfather's grave alone. Along the way, he hears the sound of digging, so he hurries to the site only to find a girl. He decides to secretly take a photo of her, but at that moment she notices him, so he quickly runs away from the scene. Just when Chulan thinks he's successfully escaped, she catches up and knocks him out with a shovel. Some time passes and Chulan wakes up to find Bao Bao fighting a zombie. She then drags him into an empty grave to be buried as he is in her way. Chulan realizes she is the girl the inspector spoke about, so he tries using a friendly approach on her. However, Bao Bao reveals the ID she used was fake and begins burying him alive. He begs her to stop, and when she finally does, Chulan comes out of the grave to find her battling a group of zombies. He freaks out after seeing her insane abilities and power, so he hides while she fights the zombies alone. During the battle, a zombie nearly gets Chulan, however she quickly comes to his aid. Chulan thinks he must be in a nightmare, so he starts screaming obnoxiously to get out. This silly act shocks both the zombies and Bao Bao. Bao Bao then becomes tired of fighting, so she runs away from the scene. And in great numbers, the zombies then turn their attention to Chulan. Bao Bao meets up with a man and reports what happened to Zhang Zilan's corpse. She also informs him of Chulan's presence as well as the zombies, which are called Jiangxi. As he scolds her for involving a helpless boy on her mission, they notice a lightning attack at the cemetery. They quickly rush to the scene to find the zombies have been burnt to ashes. Some days later, Chulan is back in college. He tries to put what happened at the village behind him in focus, but out of the blue Bao Bao shows up beside him. With Bao Bao next to him, Chulan, whose real name is actually Chu Soren, is unable to focus, so he directly asks her what she wants from him. Outside, Soren threatens to report her to the police, but it doesn't faze her one bit, and goes on to inform him that she has a new fake ID, which he checks to confirm her real name is Fu Haohu. However, Soren doesn't care and just wants her to stop following him around. Haohu reveals she wants to make Soren her servant, but first he has to show her the same power he used to defeat the zombies. Soren decides to play dumb, so Haohu brings out her concealed knife and dashes towards him. When he senses her bloodlust, he uses his skill to create distance between them. As she moves to attack again, Haohu is taken aback upon realizing Soren's capabilities and potential. As he releases his technique, the air around him changes, so Haohu gets excited and attacks him. Her skill with the knife is simply overwhelming, but Soren uses his speed and the Kinku technique as a defense against her attacks. As the battle continues, he goes on the offensive. By using his incredible speed to his advantage, he manages to catch her off guard. Elsewhere, a villain group called Zensei has acquired Chu Shakuran's corpse, a legendary martial artist. A boy examines the corpse, however he is unable to find what he was looking for, so he tells the zombie user who delivered the corpse that she has another chance to be useful by capturing Soren next. Meanwhile, Soren gets overpowered by Haohu, who reveals she was only holding back as she wants him to become her servant. As he refuses, she threatens to expose that he has never made love to everyone in the school with a seal on his manhood. In frustration, he gives in and swears loyalty to her. At night, Soren is depressed that his life is falling apart, so he doesn't hang out with his roommates. After they leave, he gets a friend request from a cute girl, so he gets excited. While chatting, she reveals that she is a sophomore and asks him out on a date. The next day, Haohu informs him she wants to introduce him to someone later. He then tells her he has something important to do, but she pays a deaf ear. In the evening, Soren switches off the phone so he can carry on with his date. When his date arrives, he is incredibly glad she looks like her photos. Kenken then suggests he takes her to a nice restaurant, and so they begin their date. On the other hand, Haohu is angry that Soren switched off his phone. She tells Josen to go to his location as there is a tracking device on his phone. By the time Soren and Haohu finish eating, it's already past curfew, so she suggests he sleeps over at her apartment, to which he accepts. At her place they are alone, so Soren is visibly nervous as she makes a move on him. In the process, her finger stings him on the neck, but he simply does not mind, as this is the moment he has been waiting for his entire life. But just then Soren experiences a massive amounts of pain from his seal. Since the two have made contact, he senses evil intentions from the girl, which makes her reveal her true nature as the zombie master. While her zombies have him trapped, she mocks him for having such an ancient seal. Soren then decides to use his Kinku ability, but he is unable to, as she stealthily implanted a parasite in his head, and in turn the zombies are able to restrain and knock him out. Meanwhile, Haohu and Josan tail Soren using the tracking device. Later, Haohu offers Soren to Ryu, and in exchange he'll be let her join their organization. As Natsuka begins weirdly toying with Soren's body, Ryu stops her. When he reveals to Soren that they are in search of his grandfather's legacy, Soren tells him he has no idea what that is. However, Ryu begins using his ability, which lets him read people's souls directly. The process is extremely painful, so Soren screams in agony. Luckily, the process is interrupted by Josan and Haohu, who Natsuka recognize as threats. As they prepare to fight, Kenken summons numerous zombies from the ground. To commence the battle, Josan uses a rock to attack, but Natsuka uses her brute strength to shatter it. Immediately, Haohu dashes at the enemies with her knives. She begins skillfully fighting Natsuka along with the zombies. As Natsuka lunges at her, Josan saves her just in time. As they are distracted, Soren is suddenly taken underground by an ally, but Natsuka catches on at the right moment. She forces them above ground with her strength, but ends up hitting them away instead of grabbing them. After securing Soren, Josan reveals his numerous comrades hiding all along. Having been outnumbered, everyone runs away. As they wrap things up, Haohu notices Soren is down in the dumps, and he reveals that he's always had bad luck with girls. Instead of encouraging Soren, Haohu tells him that he isn't cursed with bad luck but with stupidity, adding that he has nothing appealing about him as a real man, breaking him even further. Meanwhile, Ryu and Kenken are still being chased by Josan's comrades. During the chase, Kenken is about to fall off of the car as she pleads for help. However, she is left behind to die. The following day, Haohu takes Soren to her workplace called Express Delivery. Inside, he finds Josan, who properly introduces himself. He informs Soren that everybody in the company are outsiders. He explains that outsiders are humans who possess special powers and also the ability to control a special type of energy called Kai. As they walk into a prison, Josan enlightens Soren about the world of the outsiders. Inside, they meet Ryu Kenken, who was captured before. When she is scolded for trying to join a group she knows nothing about, Kenken reveals that she doesn't like the express delivery guys because they are so high and mighty. So much so that even her father answers to them. She is demanded to spill any information she was able to gather while with Sensei in exchange for a lenient punishment. However, she refuses. She narrates that for 15 years, all she did was train with corpses while being in isolation. Then when she finally finished her training, they told her she can't use her powers in public, so that's why she decided to join Sensei, an organization that allows her to do what she likes with her powers. While talking, a man called Jo-Yan shows up, suggesting he can make the girl talk using force on her. He manhandles her so much that becomes terrified of him. However, he is interrupted by Soren, who doesn't want him to lay another finger on her. Soren tells Josan they don't have to go this far since he is the one affected by her deeds. Upon hearing this, Josan agrees, but Jo-Yan does not, so everyone begins bickering. Their attitude makes Kenken reveal that Sensei is after Chu Shakuran's legacy. In the past, he single-handedly battled countless Sensei members and left with only a scratch, so from that moment, they became interested in his Kid Agent fighting style. At the office, Josan asks Soren to join their company, but he instantly refuses. He reveals he has a dream of getting rich with minimal effort and living an easy, carefree life, adding that he has no desire to put his life at risk for a job no matter how good it pays. Haohu then begins beating up Soren, so he has no choice but to obey his master and sign up. At night, Soren hears a noise outside, but as soon as he opens the door, he is kidnapped by a strange doll. After the doll takes him to its master, he comes out ready to attack. But the group of two girls inform him they are not from Sensei. They ask him to meet with the chairman of their organization, so Soren starts feeling important. Another group then arrives, called Tenshifu, who ask that Soren comes with them instead to meet their master. This is due to Sensei spreading a rumor that he is the heir to the Kid Agent style of fighting, which is basically the most insane fighting style ever. When Soren refuses to go with them, both parties begin fighting. As Soren activates his Kinku, it turns out his opponent is using the same technique. He then faces off with the two disciples, and after some exchanges, they fall back, having assessed that his technique is related to their school. The captain, called Ryujioku, then steps in and belittles him. Soren becomes enraged and attacks him, but his Kinku defense is too strong. Ryujioku breaks his defense and knocks him down with a single hit. Although Soren rises to continue fighting, his attacks are fruitless against his opponent. So Ryujioku uses his Kinku to squash him until he collapses. However, he still wants to fight despite Ryujioku warning him he might end up crippled. Before they carry on, Haohu arrives at the scene to motivate Soren by slapping him back into a rational state. Soren then reveals another technique called Reihu, which engulfs his body with lightning, so when he attacks, his strength and speed increase greatly. As the battle continues, the disciples are shocked to see that Soren has mastered a brutal technique only a handful of their clan members can do. He uses this ability to drag Ryujioku into a corner, but as he decides to wrap the battle up, Ryujioku counters his attack with a similar technique. In the clash of similar abilities, he easily overpowers Soren. But at that moment, Haohu steps in to disperse his technique. After the battle ends, Ryujioku, who has acknowledged Soren, invites him to their temple where a tournament will be held. The next day, Haohu takes Soren to a villa where they are to train together for a month. Inside, she gets close to him and transfers energy directly into him, and afterwards Soren's body begins overflowing with his Kai. After he wakes up, Haohu reveals that she has burnt her technique into his brain, so he should begin training immediately. As he continues training, he gets distracted by an attractive-looking Haohu who is right in front of him. Haohu discovers his seal is in the way, so she brings him some women to solve the issue. Soren feels insulted by the way he is treated, so he decides to suddenly quit training. Although Haohu threatens him not to go, he stands on his decision and heads out. On the road, he meets Fushan, who invites him to ride with her, to which he accepts. When they arrive at the company, he meets with her father, who immediately introduces him to Ya Jonggu, another outsider. Later, Fu Chanhao reveals that a long time ago, a war broke out in the Outsiders Society, and that war was over the acquisition of some specific powers in the hands of 8 outsiders. Both Chu Shakuran's Kidaijin style and his grandfather's channeling technique were among the 8 said powers. The next day, Haohu arrives at the company dressed like a proper lady. At the reception, she is refused permission to enter, so some guards take her away. After breaking their arms to escape, she falls down as she isn't used to wearing heels. Meanwhile, Soren reveals he isn't interested in joining their group as he feels guilty for abandoning Haohu, who has been looking out for him all this time. Meanwhile, Haohu wreaks havoc as she searches for Soren. She then encounters the top outsiders of the association. But right when she asks for Soren, she is attacked by the first fighter, who shoots air cannons at her. However, she easily evades it and knocks him out. When the groups attack her together, there's still no match for her. In the hallway, Soren gets into a fight with Shan. The fight is one-sided as she easily beats him using her teleportation ability. When Haohu arrives on the next floor, she finds Ya Jonggu waiting for her. As they begin fighting, he is surprisingly able to keep up with Haohu. After a successful evasion, Haohu gets her landing wrong, so Jonggu uses this opportunity to land a heavy attack on her. He continues to dominate the fight by using his Kai, which deals damage to his opponent even when blocked. Haohu then calls for a timeout because she feels dizzy. After hitting her head on the floor, she still continues the fight. This time, he uses a secret weapon on her. Although she dodges well, she takes damage since he can control the weapon telekinetically. As the fight goes on, she manages to keep evading his attacks but isn't doing any damage herself, so she decides to get serious by removing her heels. Meanwhile, Soren and Shan have resumed their battle too, but this time he blocks all her attacks completely. He wins the bet, so she lets him go. The battle between Haohu and Jonggu has changed drastically since she let go of her heels. When the chairman arrives, Jonggu realizes it would be bad to lose in front of him, so he stops fighting. He tells Haohu that if she grovels at him, he'll let her live, but instead she makes him kneel for her. When he gets angry and attacks her, Haohu evades him and implants her heels into his head firmly. Just as she begins asking the chairman for Soren, he falls from the floor above. She apologizes to Soren and asks that he returns home with her. This surprises Soren, as Haohu is usually very mean. He tells her not to move an inch no matter what happens, so he goes to inform the chairman he wants to leave. He is furious and wants to attack Soren, but Soren doesn't let Haohu interfere. Just before he lands a punch, the chairman stops and reveals he was only testing him. He permits him to go, but Jonggu is furious he had been humiliated. He then attacks Haohu, who doesn't move to evade the attack. She gets injured but stands in place to not break her promise to Soren. As she begins losing a lot of blood intensely, Soren panics. The chairman then assesses the situation and asks his son to take over. His son uses a technique to take control of a surgeon's soul and begins giving her first aid treatment. Shortly after, Jo-san and Jo-yam let themselves inside the building. They tell them to stop the treatment as they want to take care of her themselves. In the car, Jo-san reveals to Soren that Haohu is only resting. He notices that her bleeding stopped on its own, so he gets confused and asks for a proper explanation. Elsewhere, Natsuka has gained control of 2 members of the Tenshifu school. The father and son begin fighting to gain her attention. She then asks them both to participate in the tournament as her spies. Just then, another Zensei member arrives and together, they head to a room where Ryu reveals he has successfully extracted Chu Shakuran's memories. He hands the piece to Shuman to take a peek, but he doesn't find anything interesting. The next day, Ryu stalks Soren, who goes into the woods. When he is confronted, he begs that he doesn't want to fight but just wants to show a glimpse of his grandfather's memories to him. When he hands it to Soren, he leaves him to do whatever he wants with the memory piece. As soon as Soren observes the orb, he is thrown into a state of confusion, as the person he saw in the memory was Haohu, looking the same as she does presently. He then gets a call from Jo-san, so he heads to the hospital to find a man who they introduce as their father, called Jo-shu. More importantly, Soren asks Haohu if she killed his grandfather, to which she responds that she did. Soren instantly becomes enraged, but Shu calms him down by promising to explain everything. He begins his story in 1944. Two miners found Haohu alone in the forest, so one of them tried to take advantage of her. But luckily, a couple arrived just in time to save her. At home, they introduce her to Jo-shu, their son. After a while, she began living with them in the village. Some years later, bandits attacked the village and everyone was held hostage. When Haohu arrived, she didn't know what is going on and the men took an interest in her, so Shu's father begged for her life on her behalf. The ruthless bandits killed him, and when Shu runs at them, they knock him down too. Although Haohu doesn't understand emotions, she gets hurt after seeing Shu's mother in tears. Haohu then asks what would make her happy, so she screams that she wants all the bandits dead. To carry out her wish, Haohu goes on a killing spree, and in the blink of an eye, she finishes off all the bandits. Although she saved the villagers, they get scared and drive her out. As she heads out, Shu and his mother promise to accompany her in finding her family. However, Shu's mother changes her, so they leave her behind in the woods. Some years later, Shu is now 56 years old. He freaks out when he finds a photo of Haohu in the city. Haohu has become a homeless girl on the street, so she is easily deceived by a woman who promises to take her in. Later, she is thrown in a cell to be sold off. But the first customers that come don't take an interest in her. However, that all changes when one of them discovers she is an outsider Jo-shu has been searching for. Later, they take her to meet Jo-san, who weeps at her state. Afterward, Haohu is employed in the express delivery company. One day they receive information about a meeting of some clan heads, so he takes Haohu along, hoping someone would recognize her. However, when they reach the location, they find that everyone is dead. As they head forward, they witness the last man standing being taken down by Chu Shakuran. When he sees Haohu, he recognizes her immediately. However, he doesn't have enough time to explain her past to her. Instead, he begs her to protect his grandson, as this is the only way to get closer to her identity. Before he dies, he asks Haohu to end his life herself. He then transfers his technique to her so she can pass it to Soren when the time comes. Immediately after, his injury begins advancing rapidly, so Haohu puts an end to his pain. Back in the present, Soren finds it hard to process all the information, so Shu promises to tell him more about his father, who was once a top member of the Tenshifu clan alongside their current leader. He urges Soren to participate in the Rate Teishu tournament so he can meet the current leader of the Tenshifu. And afterward, Shu's life comes to a peaceful end. And this brings the anime to an end. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on another video. Until next time, take care.